Cultfigga TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yamin of Revolution, and we got late night revolutionary class. Late night revolutionary classes. But before we get into them, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button, like, share, subscribe. Let everybody that's up know that Cultfigga is live, y'all. Yes. I had a late night on the job. I'm getting off late, but I'm a dedicated revolutionary. Because revolution is for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I owe the people alive. And we're going to get right into this. The exposure of Kamala Harris. We found out who her real family is. Candace Owens deserves a Pulitzer Prize for this type of information. Let's get into it.
Well, where should we begin? You guys have heard of whitewashing history, but have you heard of blackwashing? Blackwashing is when you're a politician and it's election season and suddenly you have to relate to Black people. So you just sort of start making stuff up to blackify yourself, your history. You start dropping a bunch of slang and colloquialisms and hoping that the people will therefore understand you. Honestly, it's become something of a democratic rite of passage. Except this time, I think we may have caught the culprit red-handed. Of course, I'm speaking about Kamala Harris. I think her and her campaign team are really going to regret the day that their media henchmen came for Janet Jackson. Welcome back to Candace.
Finally, late night classes.
I'm literally buzzing with excitement right now for what we just discovered. Obviously, we are running a little bit late today, but as I said, it will be well worth the wait. So yesterday, we were getting closer and closer, asking questions, obviously, about Kamala's genealogy. If you need to go back, you can do that. Begin with episode 70 and work your way forward to see how this mystery has unfolded. So we were left with some major holes in Kamala's genealogy. We had from her father, Donald J. Harris, that he grew up in Jamaica and was raised by his grandmother, Miss Iris. He effectively wrote an entire piece about his Jamaican heritage and really focused on his grandmother. Like, she is the person that made the most difference for him. He honorably mentioned Miss Iris's husband, who he only referred to as Mr. Christie, and remained conspicuously silent about his own mother. How do you do that? How do you just say one sentence about your mother, refer to her as Miss Beryl? And I want to be clear, you're writing this for the population, right? You're talking about your heritage. Even if you called your mother Miss Beryl, you would probably, for the sake of wanting people to be clear on who you're referring to, list her full name. He didn't do that. He just said one sentence. This is not to, ignore my mother, Miss Beryl. And that was it. And we know that her full name, according to her birth certificate, is Beryl Magdalene Finnegan. And we know that at various times she took on the middle name Christie. He also mentioned in that piece that his father was Mass Oscar. I guess, again, that is kind of a slang way of referring to his father. But I was completely stumped. I was completely stumped as I was looking further into this because I could not find a marriage record between his father, Oscar Joseph Harris, Miss Oscar, and his mother, Beryl Finnegan. Like, this is something that to me seemed really odd. And some people who wanted to rationalize it were saying, oh, no, that's just how things were. And sometimes people didn't have record. No, I wasn't buying any of that because we were dealing with a family that had money. It is just a fact that Kamala Harris's family descends from slavers. They were given money for their slaves. Somebody did the calculation essentially for that day and time. It would have been $11 million that they inherited for their slaves once it was abolished. it is why when he speaks about his Jamaican heritage, he speaks about them as having owned stores, right? So this is not your typical Black story that we're referring to here. And so I expected very much for there to be a record of marriage. Oddly, as you guys will recall, any records that I did find suggested to me that Beryl may have been the domestic help, who may have also given birth to a son named Donald, born in 1938, who died before he even turned 2. So that was very strange. Question marks. We were like, okay, we're seeing this Beryl, we're seeing this Donald Harris, we're seeing that an infant died. What's really going on here? Why is it starting to feel like a scary movie? But of course, we want to rationalize it ourselves. Like maybe it is just a coincidence that another Beryl had another Donald in 1938 in St. Aaron Parish, and we shouldn't look too far into that. What we knew for certain was that Beryl, the correct Beryl, was married at the age of 25. So Donald Harris, who was presenting as Kamala's father, would have been 6 years old. She got married to a man named Lawford Newland, who he has completely erased from his childhood historical account. When he wrote this piece, he did not mention a Lawford Newland, a stepdaddy named Lawford Newland. And that was odd because then it would suggest that she would have had to have married his father, Oscar Joseph Harris, after that. So have the kid, marry someone else, and then go back and marry your baby daddy. I don't know, but I needed to find some records. We also couldn't find a divorce record, by the way, between Lawford Newland and Beryl Finnegan. Where's the divorce record? We did see that he went to America. We searched there. He went through New Orleans. He went through California. We just could not find anything. And in my view, there were too many holes in his account, numbers that he got wrong about the siblings. I just felt that there was a secret here. So I decided that we needed more information specifically about Donald J. Harris himself. And we couldn't find a birth certificate for him, which I flagged as odd. And I also wanted to find that marriage certificate between his father, Oscar J. Harris, and his mother, Beryl Finnegan. That was crucial to me. So here's what we stumbled upon. More information about Donald J. Harris appeared to us. This is going to get crazy, you guys. I'll tell you how we put this together. Through old Jamaican newspaper clippings that had been digitized. So first and foremost, this one fact checks, but it was a little bit of tidbit of an information that I thought was interesting. It was a wedding announcement that was published in the Kingston Gleaner. That's the name of the newspaper. It was published, as you can see here, November 1st, 1963, which just announces the wedding of presumably Kamala's mother, as we're told, Shyamala Gopalin, to Donald J. Harris. It reads, he is the son of Oscar J. Harris of Spanish Town and Mrs. Beryl Finnegan. Okay. It writes before leaving, it says before leaving Jamaica in 19, and can you pull that up? Because I couldn't read it for clarity. But it says before leaving Jamaica in, it looks like maybe 19, I don't want to guess it. Mr. Harris worked for the Jamaican Information Service. Okay, what is the Jamaican Information Service? That's what I asked myself. What is that? I'll tell you what it is. The Jamaican Information Service is an executive agency of the government of Jamaica that is responsible for disseminating information. It used to be known as the Government Public Relations Office. It says that to achieve its objectives, the agency utilizes a broad range of media skill sets: print, radio, television, graphic arts, video projection, and public relations. It was established in 1956. Okay, so now we know that before he left Jamaica, he worked for the government. So he's got some connections in government. And he's not the only one, because that newspaper article goes on to inform us that his bride, who we're told is Kamala's mother, is the daughter of Mr. P.V. Gopalin, the Deputy Secretary of the Government of India. So she is also connected to the government of India, and her dad is the Deputy Secretary of the Government of India. That's just a thing that I think is important to know, that these two people worked for the government and they came together and they got married. Now, we still could not find a marriage record between these two, but it may be plausible that they got married somewhere else, but at least we see the announcement. So I thought, now let's focus on his father, right? I'm looking for something to attach Oscar to Beryl, presumably, if this is a family that is important enough to have wedding announcements in the newspaper. Maybe we will be able to stumble upon something between Oscar and Beryl. Now, I want to remind you that Kamala brought up Oscar J. Harris, her grandfather, in her book, and she reveals a picture of him on page 282. So I'm going to show you that right now. It reads, When I was 10 months old, I visited Spanish Town, Jamaica. This is me with my mother and my paternal grandfather, Oscar Joseph. So we know his name is Oscar Joseph Harris, and we know that that's what he looks like thanks to Kamala Harris's book. Great, love that. So I looked him up, and at first the father came up for a bankruptcy hearing announcement. This is dated, by the way, March 11th, 1939. So this would have been 1 year after Donald was allegedly born. It just reads, in the matter of bankruptcy petition against Reginald Victor Harris, Oscar Joseph Harris, and Newton Alexander Harris of Brownstown in the parish of St. Anne, trading as Harris Bros, take notice that the above named intend to apply for the revocation of the provisional order of bankruptcy made against them in this honorable court on the 6th day of January 1939. Okay, so we know that they were apparently going through some bankruptcy proceedings, and they were fighting those bankruptcy proceedings. They were going to stand against them. It also, but what's relevant there is that we know it's him because it lists his brothers. It lists that they're from Browntown, and we have fact checked that genealogy. So this is the correct family. This is the grandfather that Kamala is referring to in her book. Here is where it is going to get crazy. Buckle up. I really hope you guys are sitting for this. He came up again, and fortunately, it was for a wedding. Unfortunately, it was not for a wedding to Beryl. Instead, just like Beryl married somebody else, apparently he married somebody else. Now, this clipping is from June 9th, 1952. Look at this. It says, Oscar Harris weds Vioris Cambridge. Now I want you to look at this photo, and it certainly looks like, and I know it's a shadow on the left-hand side, but I'm going, that looks like the picture. You can tell by that balding pattern of the person that Kamala has presented to us as her grandfather. And he looks mixed race to me, but that woman on the right looks white to me. Now I know you're going, Candace, that's crazy. It's a black and white photo, but you know, there's a certain way when you're photographing a black woman that she comes across, and that ain't it, my friends. But again, that was a theory. Let's read the article. It reads, Vioris Cambridge, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. V.S. Cambridge of St. Elizabeth, that's another parish in Jamaica, became the bride of Oscar Harris of Browntown, St. Anne, at a beautiful ceremony in the St. Andrew Parish Church, Halfway Tree, on Thursday last night. Her slenderness enhanced by a gown of white nylon and chantilly lace. The bride, carrying a bouquet of white asters, was given in marriage by her father. Her only attendant, her sister, Carmen Cambridge, wore a gown of aqua nylon and chantilly lace with a bouquet of pink rosebuds. The best man in the ceremony, performed by the Reverend Grant Levi of Montego Bay, was Mr. Newton Harris, brother of the groom. During the signing of the register, Mr. Gene McDonald sang, I'll Walk Beside You, and Because, at a reception held at the home of the bride's uncle on Chester Avenue, Mr. Milton Hamilton was master of ceremonies. I just went, what the heck is this? First and foremost, how odd that Donald J. Harris, as he's recollecting these memories from his childhood, now has left out the part where Beryl married someone when he would have been 6 years old and would have been his stepfather. But he's also now leaving out the fact that his mother similarly married someone when he was a little bit older. I mean, that his father similarly married someone when he was a little bit older, and that woman, at least according to my eyes, appears to me to be fully Caucasian. But I said, that sounds crazy. Let me see if I can find this woman, Vioris Cambridge, by a quick Google search. Like where that's quite a different name, Vioris. I've never heard it before. Certainly something's going to pop up. And certainly just one thing did. And it was a funeral entry of a white woman who died in Broward County. And what I noticed about this entry was that it was very scant on details. I'm going to show this to you. Okay. Vioris Anita McPherson, it says. And I'm looking at that face on the left there and I'm going, I recognize that face. This woman looks familiar to me. Am I crazy? Are you guys seeing this? She looks a little bit like Kamala Harris. There's something about the smirk. I don't know. Am I crazy? So I said, let me not jump to conclusions. Maybe I am just so down far the rabbit hole that I'm seeing Kamala's face. So I read this entry and it says, it is with great sadness that the family of Vioris Anita Harris McPherson, Cambridge, in parentheses, so we know that that's her maiden name right there, announces her passing on Saturday, June 15th, 2019. She will be lovingly remembered by her children and spouses, her grandchildren and spouses, her great-grandchildren, cousins, nieces, nephews, and friends. We will celebrate her life on Saturday, June 29th, 2019 at 10 o'clock a.m. at Christ the Rock Community Church. It gives the address there, and it says where they will immediately follow at a reception hall. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the Alzheimer's Foundation in memory of Vioris Harris McPherson. So nothing given to us there, literally nothing given to us about our family. Have you ever seen that? Usually survived by a sister, a cousin, a brother. I went to see if anybody posted anything. It says she has a really big family. I was like, okay, well, certainly somebody would have posted on the board. You know, people do that all the time. I'm so sorry for your loss. Love you. Cousin, I'll see you there. Hug, kisses, nothing. Very weird. I then tried to look this woman up in Broward County records, and it just looks like people are trying to protect who she was. It doesn't tell me who she's married. I don't see anything there in Broward County. It just says an entry for a marriage that took place in 1994. And I also see that she's got another name there, McPherson. So maybe she got remarried. But it at least tells us that her birthday was October 7th, 1927. So I thought to myself, can I find a woman, a white woman who was born in Jamaica with that exact birth date, with that exact name? It's, like I said, a very different name, Vioris. And the answer is yes, we did. We were able to locate her birth certificate. And now we know why it said that she was married to V.S. Cambridge. It had listed her father as V.S. Cambridge, Mr. and Mrs. V.S. Cambridge. That's because her father's name is Vivian. Her mother's name is Adina Wright. And here you have it, born in Elizabeth. St. Elizabeth is, here she is. This is this woman, Vioris Cambridge, born to Vivian Cambridge and Adina Wright on October 7th, 1927 in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. What the hell is going on? Who is this woman? Why hasn't this been mentioned? Why does it feel like this profile was being very hidden? And again, as Donald was jumping in to his family background and speaking about how Jamaican it was, why didn't he mention this? Why didn't he mention this woman, his white relatives? It might be relevant when we're having a discussion about Kamala's race to mention the fact that your dad married a white woman. I'm just saying, here's another picture of her. And there's something familiar about her smile. There's something familiar. I'm looking at this woman, I'm going, this woman looks to me like Kamala Harris. Now, something even weirder, the person who did create something for her online, okay, who created a profile for her on Ancestry.com, look what he put in the middle of her name. He lists her name as Vioris Anita Iris Cambridge. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So we looked into this briefly. And again, all of this has transpired within the last 4 hours. So we are not as organized about this, or I shouldn't say, we are not as certain about this, but it looks like the person who made this entry was a member of her extended family. It looks like she got remarried in 1994 in America and that's where she picks up the name McPherson. And that individual put Iris in quotation marks. Is it possible that Donald J. Harris, when he's fondly remembering Miss Iris, could be speaking about this woman? Yeah, it's possible. Everything's a possibility. Like I said, he's very scant on the details here. What we do know is that he declined to mention this woman. He declined to mention someone that his father married who was completely white. And as I said, I wouldn't have an issue with this if people were forthcoming and spoke about this. The press, as you're out there referring to Janet Jackson, is crazy. right? For suggesting, what did Janet Jackson say? She said that she heard that Kamala's father, Donald J. Harris, was Irish. Can somebody pull up that picture of Vioris again? She heard that his family was Irish. I think Vioris, maybe Vioris, Cambridge, might be Irish. Was she so crazy to mention that, press? Would it be so crazy if you guys did your actual job and looked into these things as opposed to constantly trying to obscure things to protect your preferred candidates because you believe she should just be handed this? Now the question is it possible that the woman that we're looking at right there is Kamala's grandmother? Is it possible, based on the records that we have, that Beryl and Donald never did marry? Is it possible Beryl and Oscar, never did marry? Is it possible, is it feasible that that marriage never took place and they both married two different people? And that instead, at some point when they decided to blackify Kamala's history, they included this Beryl as her grandmother? Is it possible? I don't want to go too far down conspiracy lane, but I'm telling you that we're close here. This is a big missing piece of her family history that should have been mentioned. Okay. And I find it highly suspicious. I do not think that we have answers still on who Donald Harris is. I do not trust him. I do not trust him just having discovered this information and realizing that he left out two significant marriages and is instead focusing on Kamala's great grandmother, referring to her as Miss Iris. Who is Miss Iris actually? I can tell you that, again, we came across all of this in the last few hours, but we're going to stay on them because now that we have found this piece and we have found this white woman, and again, I'm not trying to call her out for being white, but I'm just saying that, like, she is a white woman. She's very white. And Janet Jackson was not crazy to suggest this. And now we know that somebody is putting her in quotation marks as Iris, and a picture is starting to come together. Let me say this. If, and I'm not saying this is true, but if we find out that that woman is Kamala's real grandmother, and can we get a side-by-side of Kamala? If we find out that that is Kamala's real grandmother and that she decided to appropriate the domestic help who potentially died younger as her grandmother, we are watching one of the most diabolical political moves that we have ever seen in the history of this country. I just want to say that. I'm not saying it's true, again, but I'm saying that I don't like the picture. I always find that the dog that isn't barking, the fact that they never mentioned these marriages, the fact that they laughed people out of the room when they suggested that Kamala Harris could be white, and the fact that they just refused to mention any aspect of this and are remaining hush-hush on it, doesn't make me feel good. I don't trust these people. There's something about Kamala saying she's in these streets that doesn't make me feel that she's being honest about who she actually is. I'm not going to let go of this. Again, we are getting closer and closer, and I will bet you the DNC is paying attention to this show now. All right, guys, before we cover some other stories, I want to remind you about preborn. Kamala Harris is the first vice presidential candidate to ever visit an abortion facility. That is the reality. And Tim Walz supported a bill in his home state which legalized the denial of life-saving medical care to infants born alive after botched abortions. The media has dubbed this the abortion election. We have to stand up to this evil. When you join forces with Preborn, the largest pro-life organization in the nation, you are protecting the greatest victims in our society, babies in their mother's womb. Preborn's network of clinics are positioned in the highest abortion areas in the nation, and they have rescued over 300,000 babies. When a woman considering an abortion searches to end her baby's life, Preborn is there. Preborn gives these women in need a free ultrasound. The power of hearing a heartbeat on an ultrasound combined with God's love doubles a baby's chance at life. One ultrasound costs just $28, and up to 5 ultrasounds are $140. Any gift will help their cause, and all gifts are tax deductible. To donate securely, just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or go to preborn.com/Candace. That's preborn.com/Candace. All right, guys. Now, the other case that I am staying on is Diddy, because I just cannot trust the media to do their job. And it's very obvious to me that powerful people are being protected. It has been clear from the allegations that have been made by the producer who filed the initial lawsuit, allegations that were initially made by Cassie, that Diddy controls a trove of evidence, a trove of blackmail, rather. Again, these are just allegations, but there's a lot of credence to these claims, it seems to me at least, on politicians. They keep saying politicians. That's important to note that. They're saying musicians, they're saying record executives, they're saying other artists, and they're saying politicians are on these tapes. So now what we're doing is people are going backwards and they're recognizing that, wait a minute, there were other people who were signaling to us that something was very wrong with Diddy, and they were virtually just being laughed out of the room. One person who was always anti-Diddy and was always speaking about Diddy as a problematic person was 50 Cent. And it turns out that it's just been announced that he's created a docu-series on Netflix. I can't wait to see this. And he is saying that it's a complex narrative that spans decades, which we are obviously realizing this, which should really make it clear to you that Hollywood is a tremendous evil. Everybody colluded to protect these secrets. They all were aware of it, and few spoke out. So Netflix is producing the docuseries from Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent, about the charges of sex trafficking and racketeering, as well as sexual assault and violent abuse allegations against Diddy Combs. And Alexandria Stapleton will be directing the project. I will be definitively watching this. They describe this as a story with significant human impact. It's a complex narrative spanning decades, not just the headlines or the clips that we have seen so far. And 50 Cent is exclusively speaking to Variety, saying that he remains steadfast in his commitment to give a voice to the voiceless and to present authentic and nuanced perspectives. While the allegations are disturbing, we urge all to remember that Sean Combs' story is not the full story of hip hop and its culture. We aim to ensure that individual actions do not overshadow the culture's broader contributions. Now, I would actually beg to differ. I would beg to differ on this because, like I said, I read that book, Hollywood Babylon, and as it traced, and again, that was movie culture. So they were kind of getting into the beginning of film, silent films, and making it clear that it was the carnies, the carnival people, the freaks that established Hollywood. And they were creating characters, and these people were drug addicted, sex addicted, and essentially they turned them into stars on screen because in many ways they wanted to emulate, mock, and destroy the church. Right. So they called the movie theaters cathedrals at that time because they wanted people to worship them. They called the stars stars. We still call them stars because they wanted them to worship the stars, so to speak. So it was always a demonic force. And I don't think that hip hop is any differently. I believe that the feds encouraged this sort of music. I believe the record executives worked with the government, and there was a combination of a drug effort to introduce drugs into various communities and music that went along with the drugs that they were offering. So my sister sent me this clip that's going around on TikTok, and one of the things that people think is that hip hop is homophobic, right? But here you have this guy sitting down explaining to a hip hop journalist that actually the reality is that hip hop has always had an explicitly LGBTQ, if you want to call it, agenda. Take a listen to this.
The industry grooms them to be open to it. Like if we go back to the Big Papa video, right? Why was there, you remember the scene in the bathroom? Why was there a transgender pissing in the bathroom with the, and the guy? You don't
standing
remember?
up, right?
Yeah. Go to the scene when Buster's talking to her at the bar, and Big walk up and moved in, and then, or when she say true, stop it right there and look at the knot in her throat.
Coming out about Buster.
Not the knot in her throat. Talking about this young lady?
Her name is Shamika. She was from Queens and she got killed because she was was dating her, didn't know it was a man, and went to have sex with her and found out she was a man, and she's dead, and he's in jail. What I believe is that the Tupac Biggie got so gangster and so big that the agenda that they was about to push on us, that they later pushed on us, it just got pushed back. They was getting ready to groom us right there. They was grooming us. We got a transgender in the Big Papa video in the bathroom and the lead woman. Not only in Big Papa and Warning, she's in the bed with Biggie, and then in the Flavor in Your Ear remix, she's dancing behind LL. Right. And Hype Williams is the director, and she's the lead in all three of those videos, and he's the director of all three of those videos. And it's rumored that that was his chick.
That is a major clue right there. So I wanted you guys to hear that because it does seem like the industry is having a reckoning and people are realizing that this really hasn't been about just creating music. Hollywood is not just creating music for your entertainment. They are giving out frequencies and they are modifying your behavior based on the frequencies that they are giving out. And so it's important to know what it is that you're listening to. On the other end of that, every person who has tried to speak out about this, who has tried to speak out about the industry, the type of people that are controlling the industry, the attacks that people face from the media if they try to speak out is always the same. They're called crazy. They are always called crazy. And an example of one such individual who went through those sorts of attacks is the actor Orlando Brown. He was on Disney, and I remember everyone telling us that he was totally insane and deranged when he was saying a lot of things that at the time sounded crazy, particularly about Diddy. Take a listen.
The requirement is you gotta say no to Diddy. If it's new booty in the building, you know he gonna get it.
Don't take your girlfriend to a Diddy party.
You can take the but he wants you. He ain't worried about that. He is not worried about the at all.
I mean, it's so crazy that all of these clips are coming out and you're listening to so many people speak about Diddy, and each time they just turn it into a joke. And I'm not sure if they're turning it into a joke because they just think that the people are being funny, or because I guess at the other end of that is it's too much to process that all of this has been going on in Hollywood right under our noses, and the individuals that were allowing it, that were complicit in this, are just given billions. I mean, these people are famous. The media loves them. They celebrate them. And so that's the part that always really upsets me, is that when these things take place and somebody goes down, so to speak, like a Diddy or an Epstein, the media pretends like they're surprised when the reality is that the media protected them for years until something broke, something came out, and they could protect them no more. Even when the allegations were coming out about Diddy, until he was arrested, the media really didn't talk about this case enough. I mean, I've been talking about it nonstop because, as I said, we have not yet gotten the big names, okay? Diddy, to me, is the fall guy. This sounds like this was a full operation as expressed from the producer, Lil Rod, who came out with this initially. It sounds like he implied heavily that the feds are involved, that they're allowed to have these drugs. The executives that have been named in that suit, we haven't seen any articles written about them, which means that we are still seeing a major effort to protect the big names, just like with Jeffrey Epstein. We still do not have his client list. And that's problematic because that client list is a list of people that we can bank on as being blackmailed, politicians that we can bank on as being blackmailed. And it's important that we know who those individuals are. All right, guys, I'm gonna take a second here before I get in to another story and tell you about
what Cassie had to say about the white nails and the freak-offs, which is why people suspect the Lord was yet another victim of Diddy's Every time Lori stepped out with Diddy, sharp-eyed fans couldn't help but notice that her nails were painted with white nail polish. Now, why is this such a big deal? Well, in Cassie's lawsuit, she dropped the bomb that Diddy had a particular liking for the white nail polish. It wasn't just some quirky fashion preference. No. According to Cassie, Diddy made her wear white nails because he loved the stark contrast against the dark skin of the male escorts he forced her to cozy up with. And it wasn't just Cassie who fell to the white nail saga.
It's dark and demonic energy that this industry was built on. And people manipulate young women, they manipulate kids. And at the end of the day, it's all for the dollar and all to feed their ego. So that person shouldn't be talking to that person. That person shouldn't be in the room with that person alone. When you're in this position to change people's lives, and you hold the keys to what they consider success, you see a different aspect of the person. People will do anything to achieve their goals. And then people will manipulate and misuse that energy to get what they want.
And I hate to seem like a petty individual for picking apart lies, but Jussie Smollett gonna keep lying until you say we don't believe you. Like, it's important in the checks and balances of the universe that liars not get to make complete narratives for themselves.
Are you not afraid about being blackballed again? These are some power people.
What do you mean again? These people are not powerful. Satan can't create anything. That includes blessings for his people. That's why, you know what the number one job of somebody that sold their soul in Hollywood is?
What?
Is to act like it didn't happen. They all do the same job. Why do you think Gary Owen can't cross over and he already white and been in comedy for 25 years? If what I say ain't the case. It's a cabal. It's a consortium. They rock with who they rock with and they don't with who they don't.
Into a house. And the house is going to be broken down into certain rooms. And these rooms are designated by activities. So if you don't do the activities, you don't get in the room, right? So like me, I smoke weed. You know, I don't do cocaine. So I'm never going to be allowed into the cocaine room.
I'm with you.
You know what I'm saying? So there's some of these houses and parties I've been invited to, you get there and you realize, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to see, could I get invited and get in that hole? And then you get in that hole and realize, man, I don't do this shit.
Yeah.
I don't fuck around like this. You open the wrong room door, you be like, oh, damn, bro, that's how you move? My bad.
Money game. But we're in the money game. And we cannot sacrifice yourself. The best thing you can do for poor people is not be one of them. You cannot
We're in the money game, but let me tell you what the game is before the money game. Before the money game, it's called the integrity game. And we've lost the integrity worrying about the money. And wait a minute.
If I crumble, if my children crumble, my grandchildren crumble, I cannot, for the sake of my integrity, stand up here and let everybody that's counting on me crumble so I can make a statement.
How many people do you know personally who have died suddenly and mysteriously in the past 5 years? I have personally known 8 actors, all of whom...
Wow. Go ahead.
All of whom I have worked with and was close to. Heath Ledger, Chris Penn, David Carradine among them. I believe these actors were whacked, and I believe that many others, such as Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and Mel Gibson, are being played to get at their money. In the meantime, many a celebrity's image and marketability is being co-opted and destroyed. I have earned approximately $40 million throughout my career. I have profit participation in some of my films. I am being embezzled from by this monstrous ring of accountants, estate planners, and lawyers who are mercilessly slandering me and trying to kill my career, and I believe murder me in order to gain control of my royalties.
I will never forget that interview with...
Hold on, was that Harvey Weinstein, my nigga? Randy Quaid explains the truth. I thought that was damn Harvey Weinstein. That nigga looked just like him.
I believe murder me in order to gain control of my royalties.
I will never forget that interview with Randy Quaid. He was so upset, so emotional, and I really think everything that he was talking about was true. So many people dismissed him as crazy and that he was just not right, but I see a very emotional man that is honestly telling the truth. And what did he have to lose? Randy Quaid, he played as Cousin Eddie on the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation #2. And he's played on a lot of different movies such as Independence Day and this movie Real Time. So what do you guys think of this interview by Randy Quaid and him talking about all the actors that had passed away mysteriously and touching on Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and Mel Gibson being played out their money? Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
When I used to live in Hollywood and I was actively involved in the industry, there was actually an opportunity where they had tried to initiate me into the occult that goes on in Hollywood. It was a couple years ago, and I was in downtown Los Angeles with a friend of mine because he was helping me make a connection with somebody in the music industry. So as I'm in downtown Los Angeles, we go into a warehouse that he had actually turned into a studio. I come to find out after spending some time in the studio that he is later telling me that he throws satanic orgy parties in this studio, and he had invited me to come attend. He then shows me a video reel of what they do after hours in that studio, and then he shows me a video of them doing satanic rituals with women locked in cages dressed in bunny ears in this warehouse. This is then when the initiation request started, and he had asked me to come join and be a part of this. You see, the Illuminati is real, secret societies are real, and most importantly, Satanism is real in Hollywood. Jesus said in Mark 8:36, "What shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?" You see so many people with riches and fame thinking that they're living the glory life, but you don't understand that everything on the screen is a facade. Deep down inside, they're filled with demons and filled with darkness. And if you are a Christian walking in the will of God, you are way better off than any of these Illuminati puppets are.
I know it's people doing poorly in this country. Yeah. And they shot Trayvon Martin dead for looking kind of like I look. Yeah. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X ended up dead for telling the truth. So as a comedian, I don't think it won't happen to me. I think they've thrown me in jail 36 times in 36 months, and I think you've never seen me in a court of law. That means they're effing with me. And today, they crossed the line, because now they took my babies.
All right, man. Well, Cat, we wish you luck, man.
And luck is unnecessary. Thank you.
At one particular party, lots of big names, there was an artist there who said, "Hey, Lecrae, around 1 a.m., make sure you're not here. You just don't want to be here at 1 a.m. Now, my pride kicked in like, yo, you don't know me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can handle myself. Like, I'm not some little church boy who ain't never seen nothing. Like, I'm good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what you talking about? Well, it's probably 12:30. I'm downstairs. I go downstairs to the studio. I come up out the studio. The music changed. It was like really hard and heavy at first. And then, you know, like, and on my way upstairs, there's like this couch. And on the couch, I saw a couple of guys really going at it hard and heavy, man. And I was like, oh, as I started moving upstairs, I passed them up and I noticed that it wasn't just those two guys, it was more and more people just going at it. But at this particular party, Brandon T came up to me and he said, yo, man, like, Satan will steal your soul in this industry, bro. And he was really like, he's like, I love your soul and your spirit and I want you to thrive, Craig. I don't want you to get devoured out here. And I just appreciated that, because for him, he was like, he has seen some detriments on the dark side of things. And he was like, yo, I want you to be taken care of.
Distinctly remember going to a Diddy party, all the waitresses topless. They serving you, everybody topless, you feel me? Like, he got dancers in cages, people walking around with lions on tigers on leashes. I seen this with my own two eyes, see what I'm saying? And it was getting so weird in the party. I'm like, man, Bobby Valentino was the person I was bodyguarding there. You see what I'm saying? He tell me, I done got so much pussy before, you know, pussy don't even really excite me. I'm like, well, what you mean? But he there. What you mean? On bro, folks' grave. I said, what you mean? So he got 2 girls with him. So I'm thinking to myself, like, damn, hold on. These might not be normal girls. Sure enough. Now he say, man, take my girl to the bathroom. I'm like, okay. We walk into the bathroom. You feel me? She go into the men's bathroom. But that's not all the way crazy, because it's one bathroom packed, you feel me? People might do that. You know what I'm saying? So people start swarming the door. So I step inside the bathroom door. She's standing at the urinal. Dress lifted up. I'm like, damn.
Oh, man.
Okay, that's how they coming? But here another thing though, like I bodyguarded this guy who was a pimp before, and he told me, he said, look, if a man have too much of one thing, he started trying other things. So as soon as I heard that, I went celibate for like 2 years. And in the music industry, you see a lot of things that's evil. And they'll tell you crazy because you don't agree with it. I seen this.
And what was your actual interactions with Diddy like?
So my interactions with him was this. He had an appearance at this club called The Vibe in Chicago on Kingsbury when it was open. I was head of security at this club. So after that club closed, after the night was over, he have an after party. So the manager of the club said, I need you to come with me to the after party. So me and my other homie, we go to the after party. When we get to the after party, bro, like, it was a lot of females in there who stand up when they use the bathroom. You see what I'm saying? So I'm thinking to myself, like, man, like, this kind of wild on, bro. Like, this how y'all come. If this how y'all live, it's how y'all live. But they want to keep it a secret. He real touchy-feely too. Like, he grabbed this other guy, no, by his neck. Grabbed him by his neck and was like, do you have love in your heart, young man? You want to be a roach? Or you want to walk with God? I'm looking like, you gonna let him grab you like that? But then, you know, he be on some tough guy shit too. So I guess he a tough cake toucher. Did you see? So, you know, like they'll have a dude come out with the paper, sign an NDA. No, I'm going to the car, bro. I'm good. I'm not signing no NDA. I'm going to the car. I'm good. Seeing that, bro. So seeing all this coming to the news, people was telling me I was crazy. Said I was a hater. Hating on what? I don't want to party with the girls with the third leg, but I'm good.
What do you think about them accusing Diddy of having cameras in his house so he can record celebrities and politicians and use it as blackmail?
So I firmly believe that's true because in that sector of people, a lot of them practice Scientology. And Scientology, that was their thing. They would get people in compromising positions. They'll hold that footage over their head and get them to agree to things. So, like, you know, if you see somebody with the chain on, with that little vial of blood on their neck, well, they a Scientologist, bro. So it's definitely gonna be footage of them somewhere doing some compromising. That's how a lot of these agreements get made. People get endorsed. How they get that deal out of nowhere?
I just had a question. I'm just trying to tell all these young cats out there trying to come up, you know, like, where do you think they gotta go to? From your point of view, you know what I'm saying? What is the best advice you could give them? Because I be telling them, like, my best advice is they gotta do it their whole new way, different way, like they from another planet. But coming from you, coming from the man of men right now, tell them something good.
I mean, first of all, you want to stay away from these Diddy popping motherfuckers. Motherfuckers dancing all on motherfucking stage and shit. They want your ass. You call them astronauts. So be afraid. Be very afraid.
You really ain't built for the game.
Or something.
Something like that.
Don't be trying to be famous. Or you're gonna run into a motherfucker like that.
784 male-shaped toys. Do you have any idea what that looks like? Well, I'm going to show you because that's apparently how many of those they pulled out of the raid, no pun intended, on Diddy's house when they also found the 1,000 bottles of lubricant and baby oil. Now, my favorite part of this is they found all of these and they're like, photo op. And I feel like this guy and this guy are doing their best to not crack a smile. And look, the situation's not funny. It really is quite serious, but this is a ridiculous amount of these. Now, the next thing I want to show you is a resurfaced clip because apparently Diddy has been telling us what he's been doing for years. Just take a listen.
No, I don't know if guys have noticed this. Like, a lot of ladies drink water at parties. They just, you know, so you have, if you don't have what they need, they're going to leave.
Right.
Got to keep them there.
Right.
You need locks on the doors.
Okay, this is sounding kind of dangerous now.
It's a little kinky, but
yeah.
Rock with me, but just check it out. You need a lot of heat. A lot of heat. Yeah.
Heat. You mean that physically the place has to be hot?
You don't have no air conditioning.
No air conditioning.
No.
Why is that?
Heat affects the alcohol, and it also affects, like, you know, everybody gets a little bit more comfortable and loose. Builds up a nice little sweat.
That just sounds disgusting. What are you talking about?
Remember when we said Diddy is fighting tooth and nail to make sure he doesn't go down alone? Well, it looks like his plans are finally succeeding because he just brought undeniable evidence of how Jay-Z allegedly unalived his mistress, Kathy White, to protect Beyonce. Allegedly, Kathy White got pregnant for Jay-Z and was threatening to do a tell-all interview about the affair around the same time Beyonce also announced that she was pregnant. And thinking of the absolute chaos Kathy's tell-all would be, Jay-Z made the obvious choice and decided to delete his mistress. Sources are now saying Diddy has strong evidence that can prove everything that went down, so Jay's days as a free man might be counted. Y'all better get comfy because we are about to break this down. So there has been a lot of noise about how Diddy is planning to expose all his partners in crime from back in the day now that the lawsuits are getting more serious, and every day feels like one day closer to jail time. The latest update on Diddy supposedly ratting out everyone he has a history with is that he is exposing Jay-Z for unaliving his mistress, Kathy White, to protect Beyonce. If the name Kathy White does not sound familiar to you, it's because someone somewhere did a very good job of scrubbing her off the internet. And streets are saying that person is Jay-Z. For those of y'all that don't know who Kathy is, well, Kathy White, also known as Corey or Coriana, was a model and fitness expert who also ran her own PR firm, White Label PR. She used to hang around many celebrities, and she was actually close with a number of them, like Claudia Jordan and Jason Lee. In fact, Claudia Jordan, who has been described as a known homewrecker, used to join Kathy White in dating married men. And by that, I mean stinking rich married men. Kathy herself is known to have admitted that she's here for a good time, not a long time. Unless a man has a net worth of at least 50 million, she won't pay him any attention. So you can see how Jay-Z must have been the perfect match for her, even though they supposedly started dating long before he and Beyonce tied the knot. Rumors about the alleged affair between Jay-Z and Kathy sparked after Kathy and her BFF Claudia White were spotted at a Las Vegas nightclub partying with Jay-Z and Diddy. In fact, Jay-Z allegedly bought Kathy a $25,000 pair of Louis Vuitton shoes to wear that evening. Sources also reported that Jay was very particular about keeping the relationship low-key, so he would do things like ask her to bring a couple of friends along for a ride so it wouldn't look like they were a thing, which is what he did that evening. While they were in Vegas, Jay also reportedly took Kathy on a trip to the Bellagio casino, asking her to bring a few friends to their table. It looks like Jay was really taking care of Kathy, so much so that her friend Claudia Jordan was reportedly jealous of how Kathy always seemed to pull all the wealthier ballers and how she had over $100,000 worth of bags and $200,000 worth of shoes and how she could just randomly buy her friend a $3,000 Louis Vuitton bag. So Jay was definitely doing right by Kathy. Well, until he started seeing her as a liability. And that's why it's interesting that in 2020, a blind item from Crazy Days and Nights said, this A-list host model is also an actress. Our host has always stayed quiet about the death of her friend, but has become more convinced in years that the permanent A-list rapper had her friend killed. It just seemed too convenient that he wanted her out of the picture. And shortly after he said that, the friend ended up dead. It was then revealed that the A-list host was Claudia Jordan, Kathy's friend, and the rapper was Jay-Z. Well, as the saying goes, all that happens in the dark will eventually come to light. It didn't take long for people to start putting two and two together and figuring out that Kathy was Jay's mistress. Naturally, they started reaching out to her for comments on the situation, and about 2 weeks before she passed away, a major tabloid that was investigating the Jay-Z connection allegedly reached out to her. But, and this next part is important, Kathy strongly denied all allegations of having an affair with Jay. I'm not even surprised, given the lengths Jay went to make sure things stayed under wraps. He must have really made it clear to her that the moment she breathed a word about the affair to the public, the gig was up. But either Kathy finally got tired of living a lie, or she figured that with a baby on the way, Jay-Z wouldn't dare leave her hanging. Either way, she decided it was finally time to tell her story, and she allegedly hit Jay up to tell him she was going public with the affair for a price. However, reports reaching us say that first responders to the scene felt her death was suspicious. Also, at the time the news of Kathy passing away from a brain aneurysm got out, it was still too early to know for sure that that's what really happened. Besides, Kathy was young, fit, and healthy before she passed on, so her just randomly dropping dead from a brain aneurysm was just highly unlikely. A detective from the NYPD had this to say about her death. A 911 call from an apartment 130 West 19th Street in Manhattan. An ambulance came and took Kathy because she was sick. They took her to the Beth Israel Hospital, and that's where she expired. It's too early to be speculating that an aneurysm offed her. They will be doing an autopsy later today to check out her cause of death.
That's when I really saw how
dark and so it was dark. I get creeped out. I get scared to death. It was soulless.
Yeah.
Never seen anything. And I still, every time I get out there, I feel like, oh man, I don't feel life out there.
Yeah.
I don't feel it at all.
You know what? I always said when I get off the plane there, I feel like I'm in the office. It always I just feel like I'm in an office constantly. Every light feels like a fluorescent light. It feels like it never ends. But it's hard to find it's hard to find a comfort out there. But there's always this dangle.
Did you know that singer Billie Eilish exposed one of Hollywood's deep, dark secrets during a live Q&A with her fans?
Do you get hit on by old people? The only people I get hit on are a lot, dude. Everyone's a pedophile. Pedophile. It's really bad. Like everybody's.
Hollywood appears to have a long history of this kind of behavior. Actress Shirley Temple claimed MGM producer exposed himself to her when she was 12 years old. Shirley Temple was a child star who achieved international stardom with the release of Bright Eyes in 1934. What about Hollywood producer Victor Salva, who's a convicted child predator and is still allowed to work within the industry? What? Salva was convicted in 1988 of the sexual molestation of Nathan Forrest, a 12-year-old actor and star of his film Clown House. Salva even ended up putting a joke about child molestation in his movie Jeepers Creepers 3.
What?
How many of you remember 80s actor Corey Feldman saying the biggest problem in Hollywood is pedophilia? Hollywood director and CEO James Gunn had a pedophilia-themed party and even made posts like this on Twitter. For the record, I'm against vape and baby eating in real life, unless you're really, really, really hungry. I like it when little boys touch me in my silly place. Shh. Yes, this man is a CEO for one of the most powerful studios in Hollywood. The vice president of Disney was convicted of sexually abusing a 7-year-old girl. Disney music executive was charged with child sexual abuse. What about former child star Bug Hall, who played Alfalfa in Steven Spielberg's Little Rascals?
2 men from that set began sexually abusing me. These predators have some sort of sixth sense for vulnerable kids.
What about writer Stephen King, who wrote the novel that the horror movie It was based on, putting a child orgy into the book that didn't make it into the movies? What about the satanic 90s rock star Marilyn Manson, who said he wanted to come up with a hookup dating app for children? Bring light to the darkness.
You do sell your soul. You are allowed to live forever. And these people that are called youngins, rookies, new booties, like I was, had no idea that these people still live. They will prey, haunt, kidnap, anything to stay on top. This is their world. They have nothing but time, is what they believe.
Now, who are we talking about?
We're talking about everyone that's supposed to be dead. Like there is
in the industry.
In the industry.
Okay.
You know, when you walk around with the fake face and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna open up. It's like this is not. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that since World War I, we've been taught by the Indians and all this other shit how to, take skin people and wear their faces to infiltrate the families and this, that, and the other. This is something that has been going on since World War I and before that. So now we've conquered the art of exchanging spirits, trading spirits. So it's supposed to be hard to identify. But when it comes down to it, this world of Hollywood, this wicked world is what they call it. Some people call it Hollyweird. You could literally go to Hollywood and if you open your eyes, it will manifest to you. They'll be right there in front of you.
The people who are trading
the people who are on the walls, the people who are idolized are laying in their vomit on Hollywood Boulevard. And you have to open your eyes. It's done right in front of us. See, and if you're willing to sell your soul, then you'll be right there too.
Is this the Illuminati?
Well, it's not my family. It's not my family. Well, I can't blame that on me and my family, but I
Okay.
can't blame it on others. I could blame it on those that caused the harm on themselves by coming to the Illuminati and trying to sacrifice themselves in order to get ahead. Can't blame those people.
I mean, there's a lot of talk about it, you know, on YouTube. You know, we call it the wormhole of YouTube. But to hear you as a child star come out and say that this exists, you know, these people are doing whatever they got to do to stay alive and to ensure that their throne
It's kept.
is kept.
But that's not none of my business. I warn how I warn when you know you.
Hollywood is darker than you think.
Does the devil walk amongst us? Yes. Yes. Okay. Everywhere, especially in Hollywood. Yeah. All right. Let's get into it. Man, what's going on in Hollywood? Lots of weird. Get into it. I mean, do we think the devil lives there? I think the devil lives within a lot of people that live in Los Angeles specifically. Do you live in Hollywood? I do, and I want to get the F out of there ASAP. Okay. Look, now we understand. The devil won't let me. Yeah. The devil won't set me free. Literally, I'm trapped. This is the mark of the beast. Hey, listen. Hey, would you take the mark if you could have your cell phone inside your body? No. Never have to call. Take the mark. Take the mark for a Grammy right now.
Grammy.
I'd like to first of all thank the devil.
Don't forget to like and follow and stay weird. This celebrity tells an insane Hollywood story.
You were talking about the Illuminati trying to stick you for your Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
Was that like that was really true? Like,
oh, so like I can tell you what happened. So I went to Bella Thorne was having a little party, right? It wasn't my idea to go there. I was invited by some friends, and it was a Halloween party. I don't even celebrate Halloween, but like just even the Bible says good company corrupts good character. But this is when I was like not too. I just didn't know certain things I know now. Let me just say it like that. And so I was just hanging around some people, and they was going to the party, and there was so many signs. Like one of the signs was you gotta be half to go. Another sign, you couldn't bring your phone, you had to sign an NDA. And I was like, oh, I'm bringing my phone anyway. Like I was gonna sneak it in. I was signing my name, then I was like, oh yeah, you gotta prick your to get in. I was like, oh no, I'm straight. Everybody else they went, and I was waiting on my Uber. And while I was waiting on my Uber, this girl passed out while she was about to go in the party.
After they suck her?
Wow. By the way, this video is scripted and for entertainment purposes only.
Warned many women of all ages about this.
She said, watch out for the wolves in Hollywood, honey. And I said, well, I've been in British films for 3 years. I can handle wolves. And she said, well, not the power bosses, honey. And she said, if they don't get what they want, they'll drop your contract. They've done it to lots of girls.
It did affect your career because you did miss out on roles, and Cleopatra was one of those.
I was a little shocked hearing about Marilyn because apparently Marilyn had been so abused by men and had done so many things to get roles that she hadn't wanted to do. And most of these men, Holly, were fat and old and ugly and hideous.
And this was the only man Marilyn dated that worked for the studios and was powerful, who was
car in Compton, but
most important thing is there's got to be a solution, because this has been going on in the industry for a whole bunch of years, for decades. And at the same time, you know, nobody wants this to be true, and it shouldn't have to be true.
Suge Knight, the founder of Death Row Records and one-time enemy of Sean Diddy Combs, talks about Combs' arrest by the feds in an interview with News Nation. I look at what the one-time record company owner said about Combs from behind prison walls. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Suge Knight doesn't hold back. He might be in prison for killing a man, running him down with a car in Compton, but that doesn't mean he's not sharing what's on his mind, especially when it comes to Sean Combs. Combs, of course, is in a federal prison right now being held without bond following his arrest on sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy charges. Combs has pleaded not guilty to those charges, which appear at this point to involve one victim, Cassie Ventura, Combs' longtime ex-girlfriend, who sued him last November. Combs settled that lawsuit the next day. Then came a flurry of other lawsuits filed by other accusers, including women and even a man, record producer Rodney Little Rod Jones. The accusers claimed they were drugged and sexually assaulted by Combs. Combs has denied ever sexually assaulting anyone, but a video aired by CNN in May showed that Combs beat Cassie Ventura in a hotel hallway back in 2016. This happened in Los Angeles. Combs apologized a couple of days later on Instagram. So what does Suge Knight have to say about this? And why is anyone interested in what he has to say? Well, Knight and Combs go way back, and it wasn't always pretty. In the mid-90s, there was the so-called East Coast-West Coast feud where Combs had rapper Biggie Smalls at Bad Boy Records and Knight had signed Tupac Shakur at his Death Row Records. Shakur was murdered in Vegas in 1996, and Biggie Smalls was shot to death in LA the following spring. But that was a long time ago, almost 30 years ago now, and we're talking about what's going on today and the allegations being made against Sean Combs. Suge Knight is currently doing time in a California prison for running over a man and killing him. He'll be eligible for parole in 2034. Knight might be behind bars, but that doesn't mean he's not doing things or that he's staying quiet. He actually has a lot to say.
We just have to really work hard back in the day.
Suge Knight actually hosts a podcast entitled Collect Call with Suge Knight, where he calls from prison and talks about a lot of things. And this week, he called Chris Cuomo on News Nation, and he had a lot to say about Sean Combs and what's going on with his case and the allegations of sex trafficking being made against him. One thing he talked about is whether or not he believes Sean Combs is safe being in jail. Sean Combs didn't want to be in jail. He wanted to post bail, a bail of $50 million, but the judge denied that request. He's in the MDC, and that's a federal prison with a really awful reputation. Knight was asked whether he thinks Combs is safe behind bars.
I don't ever want to say he's in danger, and neither should he say that. Because once he gets to the point where they feel he's going to be suicidal to himself, harmful to himself, once they put him on suicide watch, you had a right to nothing. No socks, no drawers, no T-shirt, no blanket, no sheets. You asshole naked in a cell as a crazy man. So he definitely don't want to do that. And the other advice I would tell him, maybe he should get on the Jewish diet. Because the kosher meals is way better than the food somebody else is making for you. At least they're going to come hot. They're going to come sealed, and you got to be the one to open them. That's very important.
What about people trying to hurt him?
Go to jail. One of the things is this. I don't care who you are. Prison and jail is a negative environment. If somebody can do something to them and get a name for themselves, they're going to actually do it. Or they can do whatever they feel they got to do to prove themselves. But we also got to learn. We got to learn from our mistakes. Everything don't have to be a mistake. You got to better yourself. But we all know what we sign up for in life.
Suge Knight is obviously in prison, and we know a lot about him because he's a celebrity, of course. He grew up in Compton. He played football at UNLV, and then he came back to Compton and founded Death Row Records. But do you want to know more about him, maybe about his criminal and traffic records? I went to Truthfinder to see what I could find. Suge's first name is really Marion. I put in Marion Knight, and his criminal and traffic records come up. It shows Suge Knight was charged in 1994 with felony second-degree robbery and a misdemeanor in 2010. Now he's serving time for killing a man by hitting him with his car. Even if you're not in true crime, Truthfinder can show you things from a person's past and registered sex offenders near you. Also, you can use it to see what's online about yourself. You can get 50% off right now of confidential background reports. Just log on to truthfinder.com/LCCrimeFix and start accessing information about almost anyone. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was bad blood between Suge Knight and Sean Combs many years ago. But both Knight and Combs are fathers, and what happens to them impacts their children. Knight talked about how Combs being in prison is likely impacting his kids and the accusers in the case, how this might be impacting their children as well.
Well, first of all, I'm not calling you and nobody else getting nobody to believe anything regarding him. Like I said, and I always say, me personally, I don't jump up and down and cheer for no black man going to prison or any other man, any other human being going to prison. Because people think prison is always the answer. I'm not saying a lot of people don't deserve to do their time and see what's going on. But at the same time, that's not no cheerful thing, because when you look at it, that man have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever affects him definitely affects his kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a lot of victims involved in it, and whatever affects them affects their kids. So it's not a good thing to be talking about any about the next person. But it's not a gray area with me.
Now, I think anybody can empathize with children being impacted by their parents' situation and trauma. As the interview went on, talk turned to the freak-offs. Those are, of course, the alleged parties that were described in Cassie Ventura's civil lawsuits and that the U.S. attorney described when announcing the indictment.
The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance.
Days-long sex parties with sex workers where participants sometimes needed IVs to recover. It sounds awful. Suge Knight talked about where he thinks Sean Combs came up with this type of thing.
And at the same time, Puffy didn't react or get where he got or doing those things or those allegations by himself. He was taught from people before him, and he did it to the younger people after him. And we can talk all day and say what's true, what's not true. Only true part about it is videos, conversations, and people can see what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
But for it being happy and proud and say, what do people think? That's irrelevant.
So Suge Knight basically claims that Sean Combs learned this behavior from other higher-ups in the record industry based on how he was treated when he was younger.
Is that what you're suggesting about Sean Combs, that he was sexually abused and he now sexually abuses?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think he repeat what was done to him. And like I said, if you look at Russell Simmons, you know the truth. Andre Rail, you know the truth. Clyde Davis, you know the truth. Jimmy Iovine, you know the truth. It was at a point where it's like a whole sex trade because you take Nicole from the Pussycat Dolls, she used to push the lines of people to participate. She was messing with Jimmy Iovine when Jimmy Iovine was married to one of the most incredible women in the world named Vicky, and she used to go around and sing that song and change the lyrics to make it put Vicky down. So there's not certain things that all of a sudden you got this. The industry is a quick business. It's been like that for a long time. And the casting couch is real, but it's for women and men. But far from all that, I think the most important thing is I feel like they should let Puffy tell his truth. I'm quite sure he's going to expose a lot of people. I'm sure he's going to move forward with it. But I don't think it should be a situation like the Epstein thing where they found him hanging from the ceiling of dead before the truth come out. So, first of all, you got to start with at the top. If you're starting with the top, Clyde Davis, Russell Simmons, Andre Rail, Jimmy Iovine. Even if you take Jimmy Iovine, he had an allegation from him, same thing, it went away. You take Jimmy Iovine. They told me at Universal and Interscope, they said, you know what? We can't deal with artists that gets in trouble. And your artist gets in trouble, they talk crazy.
So that's a really bold claim being made against other record executives, some really big names. Clive Davis vehemently denied the allegation in a statement to Cuomo, saying, "This is a completely fabricated thread being trafficked by an incarcerated felon. Mr. Knight's assertions about Clive Davis are 100% false, as nothing of the sort ever happened."
Nah, Clive.
But what is interesting is Suge Knight is not the first person to suggest Sean Combs learned this behavior. Listen to what Combs's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, told the Art of Dialogue podcast recently.
When they get down to all the facts and all what happened, he may belong in jail, bro. And that's not my doing. That's not Cassie doing. That's his doing and his learned behavior from the people that mentor him. You got to realize, man, he learned from Andre Harrell. He learned from Russell Simmons. He learned from Clyde Davis. You understand? When those people are telling you that they were heavy into the drugs, they was heavy into beating women and doing things at that age, at that crazy stage, that's going to make him think that he could get away with the same thing that they was getting away with back then. You understand? The things that he was saying, you know, the touchy-feely between two men and all that stuff like that, man. All that, he learned that from them dudes.
So those are two people who knew Sean Combs, saying that Sean Combs learned this behavior which Sean Combs' attorney at this point has called consensual. Knight then offered his thoughts on the freak-offs.
Well, number one, luckily, I wasn't their first choice, their second choice. I wasn't no choice to be at those freaky parties. But you know what they show. They used to have a thing in the industry, right? And the sad thing about it, I don't like mentioning Usher. I don't like mentioning Justin Bieber. I don't like mentioning all these people that everybody know what time it is. So at the same time, they used to have a joke. They never played this joke with me. And they used to walk in the Interscope office. They'll go back there and they'll be like, "Hey, will you pass the test?" I said, "We haven't did the test." One dude said, "Well, don't say that in front of Mr. Knight because he's going to take it offensive and hurt somebody." I said, "Well, whatever it is, I probably will take it offensive when somebody will get their ass whooped." You know, that was me in those days. But they used to have these guys, they used to call it the boiled egg test. They used to take a boiled egg, a raw boiled egg, and have those guys put their pants down and bend over and they stick it up. The eggs break, they say they're not ready yet. They ain't put enough work in. This is Hollywood. So everybody want to go act like they don't know what's going on.
Hold on a second,
but
Suge.
if you just look. That's
Suge,
all you got to do.
I have never heard of anything like that. So if I haven't heard about it, just assume a lot of people haven't heard that before. But you think it's on video?
Let's stop for a second.
Go ahead, Suge.
Yeah, listen, and also, Have you ever been to any puffy parties?
No.
You surely had a long time to think about it. But if you haven't been in those butt naked parties, even some of the preachers been in those parties, and they wasn't on their knees praying for God. See, they was praying for somebody to have come real quick or something. But I wasn't there, but it's proof of it. But at the same time, everybody want to look around and act like something going on that wasn't right. It's the facts of life in the industry.
So that was kind of graphic, but this is what Suge Knight is saying. And at one point, he ran in these circles. Knight also talked about Sean Combs, who he calls Puffy, because that's how he knew him in the 90s, as Puffy, being violent with Cassie Ventura and a woman he called Capricorn.
Jimmy, Security, and Puffy pulled up on Capricorn and started telling her that she got to settle with him. She got to take this money. She got to do this deal. And whooping her ass and doing all the shit they took her to. And guess what? She settled. She took the money. And the money didn't come from Puffy. It didn't come from Shimmy. It came from Interscope or Universal. And they paid her through it like she was getting a paycheck for working there. And then they made the girl, I think she had to pay taxes on it. So that's even more crazier. So when you look at all these things and everybody want to say Puffy, 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 don't get me wrong. Yeah, Puffy stepped in this shit, and even if he wiped the shit off his shoe, it still stinks. But he's not the only one. They got all the tapes.
So there you have Suge Knight saying that Sean Combs is not the only one. He's making these bold claims about the music industry. Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty, as I've told you. Here's his lawyer, Mark Agnifilo.
His resolve is the same. He believes he's innocent. I believe he's innocent. And we're going to fight this case with all of our might until we don't have to fight any longer. The fight continues. We're not giving up by a long shot. I told Mr. Combs I'm going to try and get his case to trial as quickly as possible. I'm going to try and minimize the amount of time he spends in very, very difficult and I believe inhumane housing conditions in the special housing unit of the Metropolitan Detention Facility. And I'm going to do everything that I can to move his case as quickly as possible.
And Mark Agnifilo told a TMZ documentary that Combs plans to testify at his trial whenever it's scheduled. So this trial will certainly be a he said, she said, and likely what the tape shows type of event.
A life of parties and open bars to life now behind bars. In the past week, P. Diddy has seen some major lifestyle changes. And now we're getting reports that Diddy isn't eating while in jail. And it could be because he thinks someone's trying to poison his food. Plus, he's been transferred to a protective unit that already houses convicted fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried. So what's it like for a high-profile defendant like Diddy to be locked up in one of the most rundown and violent jails in the U.S.? For that, we'll turn to criminal defense attorney and law and crime legal analyst Imran Ansari, who repped other high-profile defendants like Harvey Weinstein and 50 Cent. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. All right, so big news out of New York, where P. Diddy has been held for more than a week in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. This comes after Diddy's arrest last Monday, following his indictment by a federal grand jury on charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The 14-page indictment lays out some pretty strong claims against Diddy, alleging he's guilty of sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The indictment goes on to allege Diddy showed a pattern of abuse, mostly against women, that included verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, including the use of extensive grooming tactics. There's also mention of something referred to as freak-offs, which are described as elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. During these so-called freak-offs, Diddy would often drug his victims, sometimes without their knowledge, to keep them obedient and compliant. Then, Diddy allegedly required these victims to have sex with prostitutes, and oftentimes he recorded that too. Again, these recordings were made with the victim's knowledge or consent. These freak-off sessions were facilitated by Diddy's associates that the indictment refers to as part of the Combs enterprise. These associates would procure the sex workers, book the hotel rooms where these freak-offs would take place, and stock the rooms with necessities like baby oil and lube. Now is a good time to note that when federal authorities executed search warrants at 2 of Diddy's properties, they collected 1,000 bottles of lube and baby oil, which puts into perspective the severity and scope of these freak-offs. Also during these raids, federal authorities collected digital evidence of this alleged illegal activity. And they kind of had a heads up that Diddy was recording some of this. Multiple civil lawsuits filed against Diddy starting in November of last year allege he sexually assaulted the plaintiffs and often recorded it. Okay, I know you're multitasking when you're watching our videos, but if you're out running errands, listen up. This is for you. I have to tell you about the free app Upside that gets you cash back on daily essentials. I use it every time I pump gas. It's so easy and free. Why not? All you have to do is get the Upside app and claim an offer for whatever you're buying. So you pay as usual and then just follow the steps on the app to get paid. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on your screen and use our promo code LCNews to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. The bombshells were first dropped by Cassandra Ventura, or the singer Cassie, when she filed civil suit last November. Cassie dated Diddy for years, and she alleges he was physically, verbally, and sexually abusive toward her during that time. Her lawsuit was settled just one day after it was filed, but that was just the start of the civil suits against Diddy. Since 2023, 11 civil suits have listed P. Diddy as the defendant. And now one federal indictment lists him as the defendant too. After his arrest, Diddy pleaded not guilty to the charges and was twice denied bail. His legal team offered a pretty sizable bail package too, saying that Diddy would put up $50 million for his release. This would have been co-signed by Diddy, his sister, his mom, his 3 adult sons, and the mothers of 2 of his children. The defense also suggested that Diddy would have major restrictions on travel, a GPS monitor, and even limitations on female visitors. All this was presented last week, but U.S. District Judge Andrew L. Carter said no, arguing this bail package was insufficient to guarantee the safety of the community or to maintain the integrity of the case. So that meant Diddy was remanded to jail, specifically the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the jail, often referred to as just MDC, houses 1,218 inmates right now, of both genders. But according to Diddy's legal team, the jail is notoriously dangerous and run down. Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnifilo, argues there are major issues with the jail, citing violence, poor conditions, overcrowding, and staffing issues. He also cited some startling statistics. 2 inmates have been killed at MDC since this June, and at least 4 inmates have died by suicide over the past 3 years. On top of that, 6 staff members have been charged with criminal activity over the past 5 years. Diddy's team wants him transferred to a different jail in New Jersey, but Judge Carter says it's up to the Federal Bureau of Prisons to make that decision. So for now, MDC is where Diddy calls home. It's usually where defendants are housed after their arrest and as they're awaiting trial in either Manhattan or Brooklyn. But the issues at MDC are so severe that some judges even refuse to send defendants there at all. But even with its less than desirable conditions, MDC is no stranger to high-profile inmates. Previously housing R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Sam Bankman-Fried, who's actually there right now. Bankman-Fried was convicted of fraud and money laundering last November after the collapse of his cryptocurrency exchange, FTX. And as it happens, Bankman-Fried and Diddy are being housed in the same part of MDC, a unit for inmates that requires special protection. That's people like Diddy or Bankman-Fried who are high-profile names, but it also cares for inmates who may need protection as they assist with ongoing investigations in open cases. Since Diddy's move to this area of MDC, there are reports that he's spoken briefly to his children over the phone. Diddy has 7 children, ranging in age from 33 to 23 months old. According to reports, Diddy is concerned about how his kids are handling his arrest and detainment. And meanwhile, they're allegedly in a state of crisis after only experiencing Diddy as a loving, devoted father. Meanwhile, there are other reports that Diddy has stopped eating. This could be because he isn't enjoying the food, but it also could be because he's paranoid that someone is out to get him and may slip poison into his food. But is that likely or even possible? And what are the perils of MDC, especially for a high-profile defendant like Diddy? Here's where we have to bring in criminal defense attorney Imran Ansari, who represented other celebs like 50 Cent or Harvey Weinstein. He says Diddy's arrest wasn't surprising.
I think we all saw the writing on the wall with Diddy in terms of the civil case leading to a federal investigation. We saw the raids on his residence. And I think that the indictment that we see now wasn't so much a surprise. And it was something that we expected arrest was going to come down the line.
Now he has been arrested. He's been denied bail. So he is behind bars in Brooklyn. And there's been a lot of articles about this. His attorneys are saying that the conditions there at MDC are horrific, horrendous. They're not appropriate to stay in. What is your experience there? Is it really as horrendous as they're saying?
I've had many clients who were housed in MDC Brooklyn, and I can tell you the reports that the facility is something that is less than desirable is 100% accurate. There's been a lot of reports of it being below standard in terms of prison standards. And of course, a prison isn't meant to be a comfortable place, but of course, they have to provide the basic human rights to their inmates. And MDC Brooklyn has been plagued with overcrowding, with violence, with poor food, with poor cleanliness. And P. Diddy, who is in a protective custody unit, is still experiencing all the bad things that MDC Brooklyn has to offer, and it doesn't have a lot to offer in terms of comfort or things that an inmate would be looking for.
So obviously, anyone who's behind bars is hoping to have a nice place to sleep, food, comfort, as you were saying. But is this place really dangerous? I know that they listed a couple of statistics that there had been several suicides, even potentially murders. So is it possible that he could be in danger?
So he's in protective custody now in the SHU unit, but his lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, pointed out recent events in that prison. And MDC Brooklyn has been plagued with a lot of violent acts. It's been really criticized in terms of the conditions that prison inmates have to live with. And certainly Diddy would be facing potential dangers because a prison, by virtue of it being a prison, is not necessarily a good place to be. It's not a safe place to be, but particularly this facility is known to have a lot of problems in the last few years.
What would it look like for Diddy in this protective care unit, I guess? He's separated from general population, but what is his day-to-day like?
So Diddy's life in the SHU, in that specialized housing unit where he's been placed for his own safety, is going to be something that's rather routine and mundane. He's not going to be necessarily even enjoying some of things that general population, aka Gen Pop, enjoys, because he's being in a special segregated unit for his own safety, which means he's going to be under more constant observation by guards. His comings and goings in and out of his cell for recreational time and for meal time are going to be more scrutinized. So although the SHU unit is technically for the prison inmate's safety, and of course, Diddy being a high-profile inmate requires that, it also means more restrictions for that inmate.
Following Diddy's arrest, we reported news that he was placed on suicide watch. It's unclear whether he was actually suicidal or if this was just a safety precaution. But we do know a mental health professional visits his cell at least several times a day. Is that possible for Diddy? He may not have these suicidal ideations, but it's just for his safety?
It's pretty routine, especially for a high-profile inmate to be placed on suicide watch, especially when they're going from a dramatic change from their life outside prison to a life inside prison, something that they may not be used to. It's typical and routine for an inmate like that to be placed on suicide watch for their own safety. And the prison kind of wants to make sure that, when all eyes are on them, that nothing happens on their watch. So we do know that Diddy's lawyers did say that he's ready and willing to fight the charges and ready to fight the allegations against him, and he's of sound mind. So it doesn't surprise me that he's placed on suicide watch by corrections simply for his own safety and in order for the prison to sort of
So we're talking about this case simply because Diddy is a huge celebrity, a high-profile defendant who's now placed behind bars, a far cry from the mansions that we're used to seeing him in. What are some of the issues with having a high-profile defendant? Does it make things more dangerous, more difficult? What do you think?
Well, being high profile in prison, based on knowledge from some of my own clients, is somewhat worrying for them, especially when they are coming from an environment which was a polar opposite from what they are experiencing in prison. So it's a shock. It's frightening. And of course, they have to deal with the real reality now that they are behind bars and they're facing criminal charges. It also presents a added sort of hurdle for us as attorneys who are defending a client like that, because we are obviously cognizant of the big change in their life that they're dealing with psychologically, and then also obviously the legal aspects of things, but also the court of public opinion. You are constantly looking at how the public is receiving your client or a defendant when they are high profile, and you are sort of tending to their needs because now they are dealing with such a dramatic change in their life. They went from mansion to prison, and sometimes that's a hurdle along with the legal fight all its own.
And then there's the question of Diddy's communication. Who's he making contact with from the inside? So Diddy has pleaded not guilty to these charges. So of course we're expecting him to bring a strong defense with his attorneys, his team. Obviously they're going to be preparing. But does it add a layer of challenge, the fact that Diddy is behind bars? What does it look like for attorneys hoping to meet with him? Would they have their own rooms? Would they talk over those phone things we see in movies? What would it really look like?
So when you have a client who is behind bars, you are meeting with them on legal visits, and you are talking to them on a secured line, which is an attorney or legal call where it's not being recorded and it's afforded that privilege, that attorney-client privilege, that privacy there. But it does present hurdles when having a client behind bars, because you're sort of really reliant on the prison schedule, B, the prison calls. You can't call your client, they're calling you. So even if you have something that you need to talk to your client about urgently, you got to wait until you get that prison call from prison, or you're making that visit yourself to jail to have a legal visit. So it's always easier to represent someone who has been out on bail, because they could come to your office or you could visit them, or even if they're on house arrest, they're typically allowed to come to your law office. So it does present that added hurdle when you're representing someone who is remanded or in jail. But of course, we have to do what we have to do as defense attorneys, and we make it work.
We talked about the side of his defense, obviously speaking with his legal team, but what about his family? We have seen some reports that Diddy has had brief phone calls with his children. What would that look like? Is it a phone call privilege system that he would get more calls as time goes on if he has good behavior, that kind of thing?
So inmates are afforded time to talk to their family, of course, family visits, but they are restricted in terms of certain hours where they can make that call, certain amount of minutes they have in terms of making a call, which is a non-legal call, and also visitation hours and things like that. And of course, a massive shock to the family. It's not only a shock to the defendant or the inmate, but the family is now dealing with the reality that someone who that they were able to communicate with, whether it be, Diddy's children calling him or seeing him, now there's all these restrictions around it, and it's happening in a very traumatic time. So it all also presents a real change of circumstances, a real stressor for a defendant or inmate's family when they see someone that they love, no matter what they're accused of, no matter what the allegations are. Now they have to go through the prison system in order to see them or even speak to them.
You spoke about these phone calls between Diddy and his attorneys. Obviously, those ones aren't going to be recorded. But in regards to the phone calls with his family, is this something that's going to be recorded and something prosecutors or even the defense are going to keep an eye on?
A phone call between an inmate and a non-attorney, like a family member or a friend, those are subject to being recorded. So a defense attorney, I'm sure P. Diddy's attorneys, Mark Agnifilo and his team, have told him, if you're going to have any phone conversations with family, friends, or non-attorneys, you got to be careful with what you say. It's going to be recorded, and it could be used against you, whatever you say in those recordings. As a prosecutor or former prosecutor, when I was a prosecutor, I used jail phone calls in my case in chief. I used it as evidence against defendants because we would receive those recordings, and sometimes people are not careful about what they say to people on the phone. As a defense attorney, I always tell my clients, do not talk on the phone openly to friends and family, because it's being recorded. You never want to say something that could come back and used against you in a court of law. So yes, those phone calls are not subject to attorney-client privilege. They're fair game for prosecutors and law enforcement. So you got to be careful to what you say on a non-privileged line like that.
But there's still the question of whether Diddy's eating while in jail. Going back to Diddy's day-to-day life behind bars, there have been some reports that he's not eating. This could be maybe because the food isn't up to his standards, it's not what he likes, but also there are some potential reports that he's fearing someone may poison his food. What do you make of all that?
So having been to MDC Brooklyn to visit my clients and talking to them about their experience inside and what they're eating and whatnot, I could tell you that they're not getting any Michelin-starred or gourmet food in prison. So you got to think on a practical standpoint, a realistic standpoint, Diddy's probably used to really good food and the best food that money could buy. Of course, he had the resources for that. So it could be that the food is just so reprehensible to him, and he's not, he doesn't have a taste for it, that he's not eating because of that. Or it could be a genuine fear that he has that someone may be out to get him, and then he doesn't want to take that risk. Of course, this is all speculation, Sarah, but that could be a chance. Of course, there's the notorious incident in near history with Jeffrey Epstein, where there are conspiracy theories that rather than suicide, he was actually killed in prison. I don't know what's going on in Diddy's head. I don't know, if it's the food that's being bad, if he's not eating it, or there's some other fears going on there. But generally, the food in prison is not palatable per se, and that could be the reason why, if that's true.
Diddy's team has made it super clear that they do not want their client there at MDC. Is it possible that he's transferred to a different facility ahead of trial?
I would imagine that P. Diddy's defense team, Mark Agnifilo and his team, would be doing everything and anything to try to get Diddy out, right? They would probably be appealing, and I believe they are, the remand of Diddy and trying to get him out in a less restrictive and non-custodial detention, right? That could be house arrest where he's being monitored, or maybe to a different facility altogether. And I can speak that from clients that we've had at my firm and that I've represented, we've had inmates and clients go from one facility that may be less than desirable to another facility where they may be getting better care. Let's say if they have a medical problem, or just generally we're making a pitch to get them out of jail, that one prison to another. Of course, that's all in the discretion of prison officials, and it's not a given, but I would imagine that Diddy's attorneys are doing everything, to get him out of jail, right, and to have this remand reconsidered, and also perhaps have him transferred to a different facility, which is less harsh than MDC Brooklyn. But again, you got to really show a real good cause for prison officials to use their discretion to take an inmate out of one prison to another, because you got to remember, Sarah, that Diddy is supposed to be treated the same way as any other inmate in that facility with no special treatment. I think it's interesting, this Diddy case, to show how a civil lawsuit really brought on a deeper investigation into Diddy, the allegations against him, and ultimately led to this indictment. And it is a serious indictment. It's not to be taken lightly. He is in jail. And it's always interesting to see someone who was at the top sort of having this, meteoric fall to this level. Of course, his attorneys are going to go out there swinging in his defense. And prosecutors, of course, are going to be standing by their case. But it's fascinating to see someone who was so embraced by the public for his music, for his persona, now finding himself in the harsh facility like MDC Brooklyn. And it's also a little surprising to me that he actually got remanded to MDC Brooklyn, because they were actually giving a decent bail package to prosecutors, to the court, for, house arrest and putting up collateral and whatnot. So we'll see if that's going to be reversed or looked at with a change of circumstances, what have you. But it's going to be an interesting case to see. And whenever you have a celebrity like this, the public are going to be watching every move, both in court, by the prosecutor, and by the defense.
After Diddy's arrest, he pleaded not guilty to the federal charges against him. A statement from his legal team reads, quote, "Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last 30 years building an empire, adoring his children, and working to uplift the Black community. He is an imperfect person, but is not criminal." To his credit, Mr. Combs has been nothing but cooperative with this investigation, and he voluntarily relocated to New York last week in anticipation of these charges. Please reserve your judgment until you have all the facts. These are the acts of an innocent man with nothing to hide, and he looks forward to clearing his name in court. Diddy is expected back in court on October 9th. We'll bring you the updates then, and of course, whatever develops before that.
But do you think you would have hit if you had not come to Atlanta?
No, I don't think I would have.
Be the one with, start a new relationship with you.
Let me tell you something. God is good because it happened overnight. Literally? I promise you. I promise you.
I can't hold on. I can't do this without my mother. Where's my mother?
Usher was sent to live with Diddy when he was 13 by L.A. Reid.
I knew that it was a different atmosphere that he was going to be.
Puffy, I think it was more or less about what Puff wanted me to do more than what it is that I needed to do. I guess there were a lot of times he didn't challenge things that maybe he would have challenged because he was young.
We're sending you over to something called Puffy Flavor Camp.
There you go.
To learn
Flavor Camp?
Yeah,
Flavor
that's what it was called. And you're going to go to Puff Daddy's. He's going
In the 90s, do you understand what that's like?
And he was doing what people wanted him to do. You know, he was singing the way people wanted him to sing. He was acting the way people wanted him to act.
To actually wrestle off of the frosted plate.
You know, Usher, I want to make my name mean something.
Let it burn, let it burn, let it burn. Well, according...
It was given to me to make a difference, to usher in something. So that's what I'll do.
According to a man... Oh, yes! Oh, where have you been?
For years, this foreign-born A-list singer has refused to discuss what happened when he was younger under the tutelage of the one-named singer.
Like, I really admire R. Kelly. I really love his style.
A federal grand jury has indicted Kelly on 13 counts, including child...
According to a man, Usher, he's saying that Usher gave him herpes.
And I'm like, man, there's a couple people she doesn't do. Usher, Dr. Oz, like when y'all say it, it's like, okay, cool.
Consider it like, I guess, marriage therapeutic. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm making it easier, in the conversation. And if y'all not married, I mean...
Can you make a song called In Your Butt?
Without that artist development of Aristilla Face Records, I wouldn't be the mentor that I am today.
Usher Raymond IV was born on October 14, 1978, to parents Janetta Patton and Usher Raymond III. Usher's relationship with his dad was basically non-existent because the dad unfortunately struggled with substance use and addiction throughout his life, so he didn't really spend any time around Usher as a kid. Usher grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he attended a church where his mother was the choir director.
Growing up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, there wasn't a lot of different ways to really explore yourself, and then a lot of options of life.
At a young age, Usher wanted to be a preacher, but that would all change by the time he was 12 years old. Some sources credit his grandmother to discovering his singing talent, but Usher himself credits his mom.
Was your grandma discovered you as a singer, would you say, or not?
No, actually, my mother.
Your mother.
Was the first person who gave me an opportunity to sing outside.
was that?
We should turn that phone off, don't you think? Yeah, should hold all calls, maybe. It'd be helpful.
Who again was the choir director at the church.
So it was your mother who discovered your voice, was it?
Yeah, I think
That
it
would
was.
be a natural thing, I suppose, wouldn't it? Being your mother.
Yeah. Well, my mother was a youth director of a choir that she conducted at our church. My mother actually sang in the choir. I mean, of course, I sang every song that was on the radio, and I'd sing with my friends, but I never knew it as a career or something that I would really want to work at, to potentially make it a job or, you know, a passion of mine.
Amazing, really, sings. It's been your career since you were, what, 15?
Well, 13, actually.
13.
Yep.
But it wasn't until he joined a youth group that came to perform at his school. That's when I realized that he had talent.
Usher was serious about school. He really was. He was a good student. He was helpful. He had a lot of friends. I'll tell you a little secret about Usher that I shouldn't tell. Instead of reading, Usher could sing the words to us. Do you remember our reading group?
Yes.
And he could sing. And then we would get into it and we would start singing with Usher.
So at some point when Usher was like 10 or 11 years old, this singing group came to his school, and the group was called New Beginning. The group was composed of 4 young men, and they would sing and dance and perform for local high schools. And their message and their mission was to kind of keep kids off drugs and basically tell kids that you don't really have to be doing all that criminal stuff to be cool or whatever. Well, Usher really wants to join this group, and he basically begs his mom to join, and finally he does audition and he joins the group.
This is a photograph of your first band. I believe this is from 1993. And the name of the band?
New Beginning.
New Beginning. Were these like your neighborhood friends, or was this like a band of?
So we were like an anti-youth drug. We would go out and we would go to schools and we would tumble and we would do positive things. There's just so many negative things in our world.
What was the first time you heard yourself on the radio? Was it from this?
The first time I ever heard myself on the radio, yes, I was in the group. And I think I was in the car with my mother. And I didn't believe it, but I heard myself on the radio and I'm like, oh my God, I made it, you know?
Yeah. That's exciting. So exciting. I mean, have you ever reached a level of excitement that equals that?
The first time is like no other. I mean, in
1991, Usher did record 10 songs with the group New Beginning, and it was released locally by mail or something. But eventually, once Usher did become super famous, like by 2002, they did re-release that album, and you can get it today.
I was in a group for a very short amount of time. This was an anti-youth drug group. It was an anti-youth drug group in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is where I'm from.
Usher's mom, Janetta, did tell this story about Usher meeting New Beginning at his school, and she said he met this group and he was very persistent that he wanted to be in the group.
He met this group and he was very persistent. You know, he really wanted to sing in this group. So I said, okay, that's fine. I'll let you participate.
Janetta, Usher's mom, who would ultimately end up being his manager / momager of sorts, she actually said it wasn't until Usher joined this group and started performing that she realized how much talent Usher really did have.
That's when I really realized that this kid right here is truly talented.
Yeah. So she was like training you. How did that work out?
Well, you know, my mother.
Like, do your push-ups, Usher. Come on, do it.
No. My mother, she can't get on you. My mother will, really rag on you if you, a puny man walking around feeling sorry for you. No, I'm not gonna feel sorry for you. You need to go ahead and work out, do your thing. Have you done your vocal lessons for today? So she's been somewhat of a coach, a mother, a friend. Yeah. A best friend, all of that, in a ball. But I enjoy having my mother as my manager simply because, who more can you trust than, your own blood?
And that's about the time that Janetta decided that she wanted to move the family from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Atlanta, Georgia.
I moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and that's where I live now with my mother and my father and my younger brother.
But why in Tennessee?
Well,
it's not like the center of entertainment USA, right?
No, that's why I moved to Atlanta.
I knew that he had a talent. Atlanta was just an hour and a half away.
And she knew that here in Atlanta, there was more opportunity than in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And all you had to do was tap into the right mix.
We moved the family to Atlanta.
But Usher did not want to leave his hometown, and he did not want to leave his new band that he was in.
I decided to pull him out of the group We are here in Atlanta. There are bigger opportunities here, which he told me, you have to start my life. You have to start my world. And can you imagine how heartbroken I was? Because I knew it was not a good situation for him. I knew that.
And Janetta is pretty consistent on this story as she tells it in interviews, and Usher's pretty consistent on it too. But when I was researching for this video, I found a different version of the story. And I don't know if it's necessarily exactly a completely different version of the story, but it certainly has some details that Janetta and Usher left out. And it comes from one of those band members who was actually in New Beginning with Usher.
Anthony Bird was a part of the child sensation group called the New Beginning. Let's go back to those days, man. How did the group form, man?
Daryl Wheeler was out there. I was also in the group called Flippo Mars. Daryl found me in that group and seen the talent that I had, and he formed a group called the Happy Clowns, man. And we used to dress up in clown suits and tell kids to just say no to drugs all around the projects, all at the schools, all over the world. And we met a guy named Sylvester Burton. And he said, man, you need to get them kids out of them clown suits and put them in some nice clothes, man. Make them like New Edition. They'll make $1 million. He took us out the clown suits and the makeup, but kept us singing positive music. We used to stand on the street corners and sell those tapes and CDs, man. We ended up signing a record deal out of Fort Lauderdale with a company called Foresight Records. It took out like our life changed, man. We ended up putting the album out.
So New Beginning charted on Billboard?
Yeah. And so Usher's mama at the time said, you know, hey, I want my son to be the lead singer of the group. Usher can't be Adrian singing. Usher, I tell him to his face, and he know that.
And Adrian and I, we were the lead singers in the green
Which
shirt.
one's Adrian?
Right there, the green shirt. And we were the lead singers.
Okay.
And so, but his mom wasn't having it. His mom was like, I want Usher out front. If you notice the picture, let me grab a picture right quick, okay?
This is classic shit y'all getting right here, y'all. This is shit that I didn't even know. You feel me?
This picture right here, that's the group.
Right.
That's me in the purple. That's Usher in the white.
Right.
When his mother bought him that white shirt on purpose, she was supposed to get him a yellow shirt.
Okay.
But she wanted him to stand out, so she bought him that white shirt.
Okay.
And that's why it looked like that on this picture. His mom wasn't having it. She ended up moving to Atlanta and kept pressuring Daryl to make him be out front. And Daryl was like, no, they all sing together. They a group. They gonna stay together. So she used to take out songs. She worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield in Atlanta. Babyface record label was at the top of Blue Cross Blue Shield. He owned the whole top floor. He would give the music to the janitor and have him take it up there. And one day, the record exec that said, I want to meet Miss Patton and bring us music and Usher up there. They listened to our music and he was like, man, where this group at? Babyface fell in love with it. And his mom and them told him that, you know, we weren't together no more. The group
what were y'all together at the time, or she just said that?
No, we were still together. She just told me we wasn't together no more, but my son's still singing. And so she took Usher up there, and Usher was singing for him, and they fell in love with him, and they signed him to a deal.
And that part right there is a major discrepancy. On Usher's Wikipedia page and on all these different places, it is very clear that the story that's presented to the public is that Usher was signed only after going on talent shows and things like that. I'll get into what that public story is. We are going to talk about it in just literally a few seconds. I do just want to point out here, Anthony Bird said the way that Usher got signed was that Usher's mother worked in the same building as Babyface's record label.
So I moved to Atlanta. My mother, she began to showcase me, you know, in different talent shows. And, you know, I was recognized, you know, luckily by someone, you know, who was an executive at a record company.
Yeah.
So they introduced me to LA Babyface. And, you know, I sang for them and they sort of let me.
Like, we want you.
Yeah.
Like that.
Something like that. Or more or less like, can you handle this? Do you really want to do this?
Well, would it come as a surprise to you to know that Babyface's record label was none other than LaFace Records? And LaFace Records was a joint venture started by L.A. Reid and Arista Records and Babyface. So this is the first version of the story that you're going to hear in this video, but I do want to give you a heads up and a warning that it is not the only version you're going to hear.
And, you know, a whole lot of other things happened, from him running away from home, from fights and, you know, tears and crying.
Apparently he was crying every day, and he even tried to run away from home to avoid moving to Atlanta. He accused his mother of destroying his life and trying to take his dreams away. In any event, the family did end up moving to Atlanta, and by the family, I mean Janetta, Usher, Usher's stepdad, and Usher's half-brother. And once they moved to Atlanta, that's whenever Janetta started to enter Usher into local talent competitions. And this is where it starts to sound very familiar to not only Britney Spears, but also to the Backstreet Boys. And like I already said, Usher did tell his mom that she, quote, destroyed his life.
And so I began to enter him into competitions after I pulled him out of that group, which he told me, you have destroyed my life. You have destroyed my world. And can you imagine how heartbroken I was? Because I knew it was not a good situation for him. I knew that.
When you pulled him out of that group, how long was it before Usher was able to know and you were able to know in your heart that as a mom, you made the right decision?
Let me tell you something. God is good because it happened overnight.
Literally?
I promise you. I promise you. In 3 months' time, from the time I took him out that group to the time that he signed his deal, he was on Star Search and had a record deal.
That's amazing.
So when Usher was 12 or 13 years old, he meets Bobby Brown's bodyguard, a man by the name of AJ Alexander, at a local talent show in Atlanta, one that his mom had put him in.
The one place where you get an audience or an immediate reaction, whether you're good at it or you're bad at it, is at the talent show. The Holiday Inn that we get ready to go to is the place where the audition was held for the Atlanta Talent Search. That was like the big break. That was the talent show that offered me my big break. And I met AJ there.
What's up with the police escort? You know I got warrants, man.
So
it's a place, dog, where it started.
This little detail also brings up yet again how it's important that there's two different versions of this story we're working with.
AJ really believed in Usher from the first day that we did the audition for the competition. It was AJ.
It was this room right here. And when you started singing, it's like you went from 13 to 23. I was like, yo, this dude is a superstar. I saw it that quick.
We can't go in there right now, but this is actually where I was discovered. And AJ met me. I was performing on this stage right here. Who would have ever thought that way out here in the middle of Decatur at the Holiday Inn, I would meet the guy who would introduce me to the record company that actually put together my first album and believed in me enough to record an album with.
People used to make fun of him. I used to make him sing on the spot. It was like, everybody said, sing, man. It was sing everywhere. Sing, and I used to get mad because even major producers, remember I had you sing for Dallas and
112, man.
Because on the one hand, the official story from Usher and his mother, Janetta, is Janetta pulled Usher out of this band, starts putting him in these local talent competitions in Atlanta. One thing leads to another. In a very rapid amount of time, Usher meets AJ Alexander, who happens to also be Bobby Brown's bodyguard. On the other hand, one of Usher's New Beginning bandmates said that Usher's mom was two-timing and scheming against them behind their backs and basically shopping Usher around as a solo act. In his version of the story, Janetta is passing off, little New Beginnings tapes to the janitor of the Babyface's records, which is Loveface Records, which is where Usher did end up getting signed for his first album. But Babyface himself has produced music for Bobby Brown. So at this point, I do start to wonder, are these record companies sending, bodyguards and random people out to these local talent shows just to scout for talent? Or is this whole meeting Bobby Brown's bodyguard thing just a cover-up for perhaps the true story?
If they're exposed to a lot of different people.
You're such and such producer, like, yo, hey, I got this kid, man. This kid can sing. You really got to check this kid out, man. I mean, this kid is though, man. Go sing for him. Go sing, man.
And I would go into the all-time famous moves.
And the only one that listened to me was Brian Reed.
Yeah.
Only one.
Thank you, Brian Reed. Thank you very much.
I first heard about Usher from my brother, Brian, who was vice president of A&R at LaFace. And he told me that he had saw this young man that he really thought was incredible. And I said, you know what? Would you bring him by the office?
Got up there. LA was in the office. And Usher was just like, he could believe he was me in LA.
Usher performed for me in my office. So I went in and got all the girls in the office and asked them to come in.
So he started singing for the ladies, and it was like, oh, this kid's cute. And there was one lady named Cheryl, one I had to crush on. Just like this, she said they had a nice little dress on. Usher went up to her like that. He started singing, hey, and he kissed her on her knee. She's like,
And this guy was 13 years old. So a 13-year-old charming these, 20-year-old women, I was very impressed with it.
And they cut the music off and said, do you want a deal? Would you like to sign with my record company?
He got down on one knee and he sang Boyz II Men's End of the Road. He really charmed the girls in my office.
That was my first meeting with Usher, and it was also the day that I signed.
Things to think about. Now, AJ would take Usher around to perform at more local talent shows, and that's how Usher eventually did land a spot on Star Search.
I went to the Star Search. You're familiar with that, right?
Right, absolutely.
With the Star Search.
And a welcome 14-year-old Usher Raymond.
How could you love me and leave me and never say goodbye?
The Star Search did a lot for me professionally. Just to be in front of a camera, in front of millions of people. That was basically the beginning of all of it. I got a lot of calls after that. But beforehand, I had talked to a big LaFace, a rap over at LaFace. He introduced me to L.A. Reid and Babyface. I had a talent show in Atlanta, Georgia. I had won it like 3 times. And he finally said, yo, I want you to meet somebody. You want to, have a record deal? I said, sure, hey, why not? So
why not? And you were 14 years old, right?
I was 13.
13.
This happened, yeah.
And a welcome 14-year-old Usher Raymond.
I was 13 and I went over.
Did you feel like that took away from your childhood at all?
No, I was living every day. I mean, I had a mother who was strict. I still had to clean up the house, take the garbage out, and then still, complete an album. Go to school, go to sleep. Do your homework, mop the floor, take the dog out, take the dog for a walk. Don't make me take my pen.
I love you, Mom.
And there's all kinds of similarities in this formula, this pattern. I don't even know what to call it. We're calling it the web right now, but I really don't know. A lot of these people definitely started their careers on Star Search. And you can go and just look up the Star Search Wikipedia and see all the people who ended up being A-list celebrities and B and C-list celebrities kind of went straight to Star Search. I guess that might have been pretty common at that time, but they were certainly, and by they I mean the record labels, were certainly scouting talent from Star Search. We got Usher, we got Britney Spears, we got the Backstreet Boys, I think Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Aaliyah. I mean, everybody was going on Star Search.
Well, I mean, I will say this, I have been of the opinion that it can be a little misleading, especially for artists who have worked what is called the chitlin circuit. And had to, travel around in a van and go city to city, state to state, day to day, day and night, put the hours in. These shows make it a lot easier. But, those opportunities paved the way. I mean, if you go all the way back to, Berry Gordy, when he had his review, all of the artists traveled on a bus and, they would perform. And that was the way that they kind of build, a catalog and built what is the legacy of Motown.
Now, I tried really hard not to go down an entire side quest rabbit hole on AJ Alexander being Bobby Brown's bodyguard, because in addition to the Whitney Houston connection, there's also this boy band connection. And that's kind of the point of this whole series, is to show y'all the same exact formula that they have applied to all of these child stars along the way. And by along the way, I mean all the way as far back as like the 50s with Motown Records. Again, like I said, I tried really hard not to go down this rabbit hole, but I have to just mention it here. Bobby Brown having his bodyguard at local talent shows to scout local talent is very interesting, and it definitely fits right into this model. Bobby Brown was also in a boy band. Now, was it the same type of boy band like we would conceptualize it today? No, but it was called New Edition, and it was managed for a time by a man named Maurice Starr. And Maurice Starr learned directly from Motown founder Berry Gordy. Now, Berry Gordy, way back in the Motown in the 50s and the 60s, whatever, he trains up this guy named Maurice Starr. Maurice Starr ends up having a talent competition where he discovers a band called New Edition and takes them on as a manager. He ends up getting fired by New Edition for only paying him like $2 a week or something crazy. And Maurice Starr goes on to found and establish another super, super successful boy band called New Kids on the Block.
With New Kids, I mean,
You couldn't go wrong. I mean, we had over 4,000 products out there, different products, and everything was selling.
New kids' sleeping bag, new kids' phone, new kids' dolls, new kids' Walkman, new kids' puzzles, new kids' tapes, new kids' books, new kids' videos.
Everything was selling, everything. So you couldn't go wrong. I mean, you could say a sock, a pencil with a piece of dirt on it, a towel from underarm deodorant. I mean, anything.
I noticed that the merchandise for New Edition wasn't really selling to white kids, but it was selling to black. So I figured the ultimate would be a teen white act. And that's when I came up with the idea of New Kids on the Block.
Which was basically the blueprint for the Backstreet Boys.
Well, New Kids on the Block, that's when I took it to the street. I remember the first time I went into a flower shop and I heard this little white kid singing. I said, hey, you want to be in a group and all? I said, I'm, Maurice Starr. He hadn't really heard of New Edition. So, and I said, well, here's my number. If you want to do this, give me a call. I got a call. It wasn't from him. It was from the FBI saying that, why is this big black man giving little white boys the telephone number?
And he co-managed this band with a man named Dick Scott.
Hello, my name is Dick Scott. I've been in the business so long.
Now, Dick Scott learned directly from none other than Motown legend and founder, Berry Gordy. So it goes, Berry Gordy trains up Dick Scott as a Motown executive. Then Dick Scott works with Maurice Starr to co-manage New Kids on the Block. But there was another New Kids on the Block manager named Johnny Wright. He was the tour/road manager with his wife, Donna Wright. Johnny Wright was featured heavily in some of my more recent videos about this topic, the one with P. Diddy and the one with the Backstreet Boys, because he was a major Hollywood manager back in the day, and he still is today. Johnny Wright was the tour manager for New Kids on the Block. He was Britney Spears' manager. He was NSYNC's manager and Justin Timberlake's manager specifically. He was Backstreet Boys' manager. I mean, he was all up in the mix back in the day. So we have a direct line from Berry Gordy, Dick Scott, Maurice Starr, Johnny Wright, and that leads us directly to the Backstreet Boys. And it goes from the boy band Jackson 5 to New Edition, which is supposed to mean New Edition of Jackson 5. New Edition inspires New Kids on the Block. New Kids on the Block inspires Backstreet Boys. And Backstreet Boys is the blueprint for the modern day boy band. Anyway, back to Usher. So we have a 13-year-old Usher, and he is about to go on Star Search. And again, the whole thing was set up by Bobby Brown's bodyguard, AJ Alexander.
Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe this little kid was doing all the things he was doing, getting in their face, kissing their hands.
People thought he was singing with a track. That's how pitch perfect he was.
I was all out in the audience. I was all over the girls. I was a ham.
Well, AJ invites someone else to come and watch a young Usher perform on Star Search, and that someone else is a man by the name of Bryant Reed. And Bryant Reed isn't just some random bodyguard. No. Bryant Reed is actually the brother of one of the biggest, most powerful record executives at the time, L.A. Reid.
How did you get your record deal? Well, that came about through a talent show in Atlanta, Georgia. You never believe this, man. I was recognized by L.A. Reid's brother, Brian Reid, who was A&R at the time up at LaFace Records. He just called me out of the blue and was like, yo, Usher, I want you to come up there and sing for my brother and Babyface. I was like, nah, you joking. I'm serious. So I came up there, sung for him in the office now. Embrace yourself. I sung for L.A. Face and a couple of employees, and right off after that, you got a record deal. I mean, that sounds real easy with this business.
And something I'm starting to realize is it doesn't actually really matter what label these people work for, because they move labels all the time. It's just like lawyers moving big law firms. What really matters is the name behind the label. It don't really matter what the name of the label is. L.A. Reid already had established a pretty strong relationship with Sean Puff Daddy P. Diddy Combs, and that's going to become important in a moment. But we have 13-year-old Usher. He auditions on Star Search. We have L.A. Reid's brother coming to watch him perform on Star Search, and apparently he knocked the socks off of L.A. Reid's brother, Bryant. There are clips from this performance, and you can see a young Usher was working it just like a young Backstreet Boy was. But he was in the audience. He was gyrating. He was holding out his hand to the audience. He was hamming it up. And I guess this really impressed not only L.A. Reid's brother, but L.A. Reid himself.
My younger brother, his name is Bryant. He went to a talent show. He says, I saw this kid.
He blew me away with his stage presence, his showmanship.
You have to see him. I was like, okay, not particularly excited. Okay, bring him by.
He had that intangible, that it factor.
So he auditions for L.A. Reid.
So he brings Usher to my office at 14 years old.
Just by himself or with his parents?
With his mother. Usher comes in and he starts to perform for me. He drops down on one knee and he starts singing this song called End of the Road, a song that Babyface and I had produced for Boyz II Men. It was a really big hit. He starts singing the song. And like that, I was like, oh my God. Two things happened. One is a star was born. And two, I really knew what my calling was that day. I was like, now I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to find guys like Usher.
And he gets signed to the label LaFace on the spot.
He was offered a deal on the spot. That was it.
Literally the same day he auditioned, which in my opinion kind of set off alarm bells because that means that Usher's mom probably did not have time to run the contract by any lawyers, which is a little bit exactly the same as the Backstreet Boys.
When the band came to New York to sign their record contract, Denise, who was AJ's mother, wanted an outside lawyer to look at the contract. And Lou says, absolutely not. It's now or never. And so she signed.
Hey, we signed a contract. Let's move forward and let's make a lot of money together and let's make this thing happen.
So once little baby 13-year-old Usher is signed, they put him to work immediately and they let him sing a featured song on the Poetic Justice soundtrack. And looking back at this very first music video, it is clear that Usher was destined for the A-list. The music video featured a tiny little Usher in a suit in the Stanley Moss Courthouse. Probably, alongside a still living Kim Porter, Tupac Shakur, and young Janet Jackson. According to reports, when Usher was first signed to LaFace, he was given Sean Puff Daddy Combs as a mentor? Let me not get ahead of myself. Anyway, okay, so Usher is 13 years old, and that's the time where he was set to record his first album with L.A. Reid's label, LaFace, and he promptly began to lose his voice and struggle with acne because he was going through puberty.
Jan Smith, an Atlanta, Georgia native, has worked with over 3,000 students in 14 years. Her vocal training client list includes multi-platinum Grammy-winning artists such as Rob Thomas, Matchbox 20, Chili of TLC, Jermaine Dupri, L.A. Reid, and many nationally acclaimed recording artists.
When he first came to you, what was he like?
Well, he was in a point of distress at that point, having some problems with his voice, and actually his mother had called her friend Elton John. And Elton was in a studio here in Atlanta working on a project with some friends of mine who are in Collective Soul. And anyway, Janetta asked Elton for a referral, knowing that Elton had vocal problems. And Elton referred her to me. And Elton referred her to me. So she brought her son to me, and we evaluated what was going on with him. I had him see a doctor first, and then we began working on rebuilding his voice so that he could make his high notes and straighten out some of his range.
Cultfigga. Follow me.